Compared to most programming languages, JavaScript is a pretty small language, and many tasks that are common in modern web applications are difficult and tedious with raw JavaScript. Furthermore, code to accomplish these tasks in one browser often works differently in another browser. So, many JavaScript libraries have evolved over time, and jQuery is the single most popular and widely used of those. So jQuery does a number of things. One of them that we'll look at extensively is AJAX. AJAX means the process that you use in JavaScript to talk to the server, get some data back, and update the page without doing a page reload. So we'll spend quite a lot of time looking at the AJAX utilities of jQuery. Another thing that jQuery does is to manipulate the DOM. That means to look around in the current HTML page, find elements, and change them. jQuery also does animation. It also has a way of assigning event handlers like button clicks in a way that works consistently from browser to browser. It has a number of just general utilities, in other words, making the JavaScript language itself a little bit richer. And jQuery UI, which is an add-on library to jQuery, provides a number of rich GUI controls that are not part of HTML. The ones that are highlighted in red are the ones that we're going to spend the most time on: the AJAX utilities, the DOM manipulation utilities, and the rich user interfaces. Okay, so when I made the claim, jQuery is the most popular and widely used JavaScript library, what did I base that on? Well, one thing that you can look to try to determine the popularity of certain technologies is job postings. So Indeed.com is a popular job site, and it gives a graph of job postings across the last 10 years that have contained certain keywords. Now, the thing to note, however, is that the postings are in percentages, not absolute numbers. So if you see a little dip in jQuery, and everyone else seems to have a little dip as well, that does not mean that there were fewer jQuery jobs in that time period. It means that the economy got strong and there were other nursing jobs, construction jobs, teacher jobs in that time period. So the percentage of jQuery jobs is lower. So the thing to look at in these graphs is general trends and relative numbers. The exact absolute numbers are not important. And the thing that you see here is that if you compare a number of the popular libraries, that jQuery job postings have consistently been 5 or 10 times greater than job postings that mention any of the other JavaScript libraries. And so there's a lot of libraries. There's Angular, there's Node, there's Dojo, there's EXTJS, there's Scriptaculous, there's YUI, there's MooTools, there's Prototype, there's Google Closure, and there's a lot more. Which one should you start with? Well, to answer which one is best is an extremely difficult task and very subjective. So, unless you have a reason to do otherwise, you might as well start with the one that's most widely used. And clearly, at least based on job postings, jQuery is the most popular one. And if you look at Google searches instead of job postings, you see the same thing. jQuery is the dominant one, 5 to 10 times more popular than any of the others. Now, Google doesn't quite say whether their graph of searches over the last number of years is absolute or relative. It seems like it's probably relative, but exactly the scale that Google uses, they don't publish. But nevertheless, you can see general trends and you can see relative values. And so right now, jQuery is the dominant, most popular JavaScript library. Now, Angular and Node are growing. Maybe somebody else will come along and grow dramatically soon. And so if you revisit this in a year or two, the first choice, jQuery, might not be absolutely so clear. But nevertheless, right now, jQuery is the dominant library. Many of these others are very important and valuable, but if you're going to start with one, you might as well start with jQuery. Okay, so one of the things that jQuery does is try to make code that's consistent from browser to browser. So if you're a Python programmer, or you're a C# programmer, or you're a Java programmer, you write code on a Windows box, and it runs identically on a Linux box or Solaris box or a Windows Server box. But JavaScript is an exception to this general trend. JavaScript code in Internet Explorer often runs a little different than in Microsoft Edge, runs a little different than in Firefox, a little different than in Chrome, a little different than in the iOS browser, a little different than Safari, and so forth. And so one of the benefits of jQuery is to unify the code. So you write the code once. Underneath the hood, jQuery checks for the browser version or adapts to different browser capabilities, but you write the code the same way. That's a huge boon. So as of October 2015, jQuery says we will support the latest version of Chrome, Firefox, and Opera, and we will support the previous major version of Chrome, Firefox, and Opera. This is the same general strategy as Google Docs takes. Now, this does not mean that older versions of Chrome, Firefox, and Opera will fail in jQuery. It's just that when a new capability is released in jQuery, they will test it only in the current and previous versions of those browsers. With Internet Explorer, there was kind of a fork. There was first originally jQuery version 1 point whatever, and then there was jQuery version 2 point whatever. As of jQuery 1.9, the early jQuery 2 versions follow the same API. In other words, the same method calls and the same results. They just use more efficient approaches. And so the older support for Internet Explorer stopped with jQuery 1.9. But if you really need to support old browsers, you can still use jQuery 1.9. The version 2 of jQuery and updates to jQuery in the future will support Internet Explorer 9 and later. Now, as of this production of this video in October of 2015, there was no mention on the official jQuery support pages of Microsoft Edge, which is the browser that comes with Windows 10. However, it's well known, and if you look at the jQuery blogs, that work is in progress, and official support for Microsoft Edge should be out very soon, probably by the time you see this video. Okay, Safari from Apple, version 5.1 and later, the Android browser 4.0 and later, and the iOS browser that runs on cell phones, version 6.1 and later. So what this means is that super old browsers are not necessarily compatible with jQuery. But by writing your code in jQuery rather than in raw JavaScript, not only do you have a lot of help so that you can write your code a lot shorter and it's a lot simpler and it's a lot less tedious, but it's likely to be a lot more portable and compatible from browser to browser. Nevertheless, one of the issues with JavaScript, whether or not you use jQuery, is you need to carefully test on a large number of browsers. Now, it's extremely likely that you're going to write some jQuery code, and you're going to test it in Chrome, Firefox, Opera, several Internet Explorer versions, Safari, Android, iOS, and so forth, and you'll find that it'll work the same and it'll work consistently from browser to browser. But you need to do that test. In a production environment, don't assume that jQuery did everything properly. In most cases, they did. But nevertheless, you need to carefully test before you deploy a real application across multiple browsers.